So apologies to all of you in YouTube land. You're officially in the crew here now. I was just telling everybody about how this episode is going to be a little daunting. Some people might be discouraged by it because this is going to kind of help you decide whether you want to play this game for money or whether you want to play this game for fun. And I don't want to imply that you can't have fun playing for money and being profitable. But there's a lot of work that's involved in getting to a profitable level, and some people are just going to decide that work's not worth it. Now, I am at the end of this. You're going to want to stick around because I am going to give you a shortcut. Everybody will tell you there's no shortcuts in poker, that there is no ways to skip out on the hard work and take the easy road. That's not true. It's not at all true. There actually is a way to take a huge shortcut and limit the amount you need to learn and give yourself a shorter path to success. And we're going to talk about that at the end. All right. Now that we've got everybody here, let's rein this in. Appreciate everybody coming in today. I would rate this better than Pizza Hut, better than Domino's, but I don't know that I'd put it ahead of Little Caesars. So, while we're getting ready to do this, and I wolf down a slice real quick, I want to hear from you guys in chat. What are some of the struggles that you've had getting over the hump, getting to a place of profitability? And as we go through this today, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in any of the chats. I'm watching all three chats here, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. And we can have an interactive discussion today. What's up, Frank? Texas Poker Champ. I've heard SA is really taken off since Lodge took over. Like, a lot of people have gone there. It sounds like they're doing well. Vice Chick, good to see you. All right. I'm going to take some notes here. And we're going to put this document in the show notes after the stream. So if you want to follow along here, you can. Don't feel like you have to write all this down because you'll just be able to pull the document up later. But let's talk about the premise, okay? Let's start with the premise of where we are in 2025. Winding my range near the end of tourneys to avoid the short stack. Yes, late tournament strategy is a huge thing. Huge thing. It's one of my bullet points. Okay, so let's zoom out. Let's just zoom out for a second here, okay? Talk big picture. First thing we have to understand, you want to make money in poker. Poker is a zero-sum game, okay? And what that means is that for somebody to win, somebody has to lose. Sure, there's rare opportunities where there's overlay and promos and WPT free rolls and kind of crazy things that come up. But for the most part, it's a zero-sum game. You're not trying to outplay the cards. You're trying to outplay your opponents. Super, super important. Now, this statement isn't even accurately true because we have this thing called rake, right? Whether you're playing tournaments or cash games, there's some sort of rake coming out. Online, live, it doesn't matter. So it's actually almost a negative sum game where you not only have to beat your opponents, but you have to beat the rake. Now, someday, and I hope to God it's 30, 40, 50, 100 years down the road, but someday, poker is going to be an unbeatable game because eventually society is going to get smarter and wiser and more disciplined, and we're going to get better at emotional self-control, and everybody's going to be able to play this game at a high level. And then the only people that are going to win are the casinos or the online gaming sites that are charging rake. right? So eventually at some point, this game will be unbeatable. Now, we don't know how long that's going to be, right? And again, I really hope that it's a long time away, but it could be 5, 10, 15 years. We just don't know. So what decides who wins and who loses in poker? Well, there's some good news and some bad news here because it's really simple. Right now, the people who win in poker are the ones that work the hardest. And the good news is this, is not a lot of people want to work hard, right? There is not this world where the vast majority of people in poker are working on their game. When you talk about things like, even simple things like knowing your ranges, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Who the hell wants to spend time studying ranges? And especially if we're talking about people who do not play poker for a living, people who have families, people who have jobs, they get a certain amount of recreational free time each week that they have to play this game. And it's a precious resource, right? It's a commodity. It's a limited amount of time that they have set aside to play the game they love. So to take additional time out of that precious resource and say, you know what, instead of playing poker 16 hours this week, I'm going to play poker 8 hours and I'm going to study 8 hours. Nobody wants to do that. Who the hell wants to do that? They don't want to take that time out. So the good news is you're still in a world where enough people are not willing to work hard that hard work can pay off and position you for success in this game. The bad news is that it's work. It's work. Studying this game is work. Now, I know there's those sickos out there that love to study and love to learn things, but generally speaking in this game, the easiest money, the most viable money is not the sexy money. And a lot of people want to chase the sexy money. They want to go after the big 6-figure scores in tournaments, and they want to go hit the bad beat jackpot in cash games, or they want to have the cash session where they buy in for 300 and they cash out for 3,000, right? They're chasing the glamorous money, the sexy money, when the consistent money, the most obtainable money, the lowest hanging fruit, isn't usually the glamorous money. And that too ends up becoming work. It becomes this thing that we have to do instead of this thing that we want to do. So in a very zoomed out world, right, what we have is we have a lot of people who want to make money, very few people willing to do the work to make money, and that leaves opportunity, right? Because opportunity is this gap, right, between what people are willing to do and what it takes to be successful. All right, I'm going to say that again. Opportunity is the gap between what people are willing to do and what it takes to be successful. If everybody was doing what it took to be successful, there would be no opportunity because poker is a zero-sum game. So your ability to make money starts at the point where you stop wanting to do the thing that it takes to be successful, because that's where everybody stops, right? The moment it starts to get hard, the moment you start to lose motivation, the moment you start to lose excitement is the same place that everybody starts to feel hard and starts to lose motivation and starts to lose excitement. And that's where the opportunity starts. And especially in this world where, you know, swipe right, swipe left, you know, short form content, we're just speeding through things. Everything is instant. We have this instant gratification. So we just think that we should get everything we want handed to us in the moment, right? And it's not an intentional thing. I'm not calling us all just lazy slackers, but we've been conditioned to think that I put in A, I get out B. You know, I put $1 in the soda machine, I get a soda out. Like, And we want poker to be that same way. And we don't really like we have a tendency to think we've already done the work. We're like, well, I studied last week, so now I should win a tournament this week, right? And we give up way too soon. So I want to make it very clear. Let me put that last sentence. The distance between what people are willing to do and what it takes to win. I want to make it very clear. In 2025, right now, as you're watching this video on any of the social medias, if you're watching this back, the recording, right now, it is absolutely possible to make money in this game. In fact, I'm going to talk about this on our podcast tonight. Huge shout out. Make sure you guys check out watchchasethedream.com, 7:30 Eastern. We'll be live tonight. One of the things we're going to be talking about tonight, and I get so irritated. Somebody said it to me this weekend. Oh, I just wish I could go back to pre-Black Friday and know everything I know now. Bullshit. Bullshit. It's right now. Right here. You are in pre-Black Friday knowing everything you know now. Because these games today are still soft. They're still full of people who don't want to learn the basics of how to play this game. You can still hop on any online site in the United States of America and see people limping. And if you're out, shout out to all my limpers, no offense. Stop doing it, right? You can still log into any site in 2025 and see people shoving 150 big blinds with top pair. Nothing has changed. I know there's more training sites out there and more study materials. You know what that's doing? It's just more noise for people to screw up. You give somebody additional tools. If they don't know how to use the tools, it does not matter. These games are still soft. And the opportunity is still there. But the reason that so many people struggle to get over the hump is they underestimate how much work it takes to get there. Or again, like I talked about for those of you that weren't on YouTube, because I didn't go live on YouTube yet, they don't understand that as they put the work in, the fun starts to suck out and the fun, it starts to become not worth it. So what I want to do, is I want to go through the skills on the poker table you need and the intangibles off the poker table that aren't poker-specific skills to be successful. And what I want all of you to do that are watching Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, shout out to everybody on all different platforms. I want you to ask yourself honestly. I want you to have some accountability and be really brutally honest with yourself and say, have I worked hard on this? As I bullet point these down, as we talk about all of these different areas, ask yourself how hard you've worked in each of these areas. And just kind of take a mental note of the areas you feel you've really worked hard in. And I would call working hard like mostly mastering. Now, I don't mean that like you're the greatest person at 3-bet pots in the world. I just mean like you have a very confident understanding of this item and your execution of it, and you feel like you've put a lot of work into it, and you feel like you've worked harder at this bullet point than the majority of people in the game. Now, remember, depending on the site and the numbers and the rake and everything, you're going to hear anywhere from 90 to 97% of players are not profitable. So what you're trying to do is get in that percentile. You're trying to get in the top 3 to 10%, not of the game as a whole, but of the games you're trying to beat. So if you want to be a low stakes player and make money, you got to be better than 90 to 97% of the low stakes players, not all of the players, right? You want to play mid stakes? You got to be better than 90 to 97% of the mid stakes players. You play cash in your local casino in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, you need to be better than 90 to 97% of the players in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. You don't need to be better than Joe Schmo at the Triton playing in a 200K event. Training sites mostly focus on GTO, which is not the best strategy for a majority of the members' stakes. For sure. All right. So ask yourself, are you outworking the people at the games you play in these categories. Let's start with some poker skills. First one, so much fun. So much fun. Pre-flop ranges. Yay! Who loves our pre-flop ranges? Who loves looking at charts of 60 big blinds deep, 80 big blinds deep, 100 big blinds deep, middle position, late position, early position, right? So freaking important. And it's the least fun part of this game. But if you are opening hands you shouldn't be opening from certain positions, or you're not opening hands you should be opening, it can cost you a fortune. And what's really tough is if all the other aspects of your game are on point and you don't know your pre-flop ranges, it's going to cost you a ton of money, because you're going to end up in spots where, you know, you're opening ace 3 offsuit from under the gun and you're hemorrhaging money. It doesn't matter that you're good post flop. It doesn't matter that you understand C bets and you understand dealing with check raises and all that stuff. You're opening a hand that costs you a ton of money. Same thing. If you get to the button and you're scared to open a hand like king 8 offsuit, you're costing yourself money. Now, I'm talking in a tournament world. Please do not open king 8 offsuit in your local cash game where there's a rake, right? But in tournaments, right, button's the most profitable spot. So knowing these ranges, right, not opening hands that we're not supposed to be opening hands we're supposed to be opening, this is where we really start to cut down on our losses, increase our wins. Some of you out there just now realize that ranges are different for cash games and tournaments. They're very different, right? Have you studied that? Do you understand it? Have you mastered your craft with pre-flop ranges? I would love to be able to come in here and just give you like just use this range from every position and from every stack depth and you'll be okay-ish. But your goal is not to be okay-ish. If you're listening to this and you're like, I kind of want to be profitable, I'd like to take my hobby and make a little money off of it and not have to redeposit every week. Okay, well, now we're setting the bar to a place where being okay is not good enough. Where being in the top 80th percentile is not good. I got to outwork 90 to 97% of people in the games I play. So I got to know my ranges better than they do. I got to know my ranges. You got to do it. You got to dig into it. And what's great is, you know, 15, 20 years ago when me and some of my friends were getting started in this game, man, you wanted to learn this stuff, you had to go spend money on it. Nowadays, like pre-flop ranges, you can go to rangetrainer.app and see the pre-flop ranges for free. There's super cheap apps like Floptimal and all of these. Everybody has these. They're out there. You can find them. Hop on the Google machine. You don't have to spend money to get it's free information. You just got to be willing to spend the time. And this is one of those things where you got to be like, all right, do I want this? Do I want to be profitable bad enough that I will put in the work and study my ranges? Second thing you got to be good at are 3-bet pots. And this is a huge one because most players don't want to 3-bet a proper percentage. They want to 3-bet aces, kings, queens, ace, king. And the problem with that is, one, you're very easy to play against. As somebody that plays against these players on a regular basis, when I see someone with a 3% 3-bet, I don't have to worry about anything because I either got you crushed or you got me crushed, and I have no hard decisions whatsoever. None. You 3-bet me 100 big blinds deep with that range, I'm going to call with my pocket sixes. When I hit my set, I'm taking your whole stack, and when I don't hit my set, I'm getting out of the way. Easiest decisions ever, right? You have to get that 3-bet percentage up to that 7, 8, 10, 12% to be dangerous. And in order to do that, you got to be comfortable taking it through post flop. You can't just be like 3-betting and then shutting down on every flop. Like, you got to be comfortable with that. And some of that involves 3-betting out of position, right? Which I'll tell you is not fun. It's not fun to 3-bet ace jack off from the small blind and then have the flop come 9-8-6 and have to deal with that. But it's part of the game. You have to work through that. You have to learn how to navigate those difficult spots. You have to learn how to play 3-bet pots, especially out of position. You have to learn to 3-bet some hands that you're not comfortable 3-betting to get your aggression up so that when you do have those aces and kings and ace king and ace queen suit and all those hands, you get paid. which is so important. If you know your pre-flop ranges, you're better than 99.5% of the people you play with. Exactly, Frank. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about outworking our opponents. And thank God we live in a world today in 2025 where people don't want to work hard. And that's possible. That's possible. Venom says ranges were 6s plus and ace-10 suited back then. They were super tight, right? Jennifer was like the first thing to come out and like reshape the way that ranges were done in way back in the day. Tone says, oh God, my 3-bet percentage is way lower. Welp, I suck. No, you don't suck. And I know you're probably saying that tongue in cheek. It's not a sucking. It's that in order to play a style of poker that is difficult to play against, in order to outwork the people you're trying to beat, you need a 3-bet range that makes it hard to play against you. And a 3 or 4% 3-bet range is just not hard to play against. It's very, 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 very easy to play against. So it's one of those things you can work on. And I'd love to tell you it's an easy thing to do. But again, there's a process involved, right? Step 1, learn what hands to 3-bet. Step 2, practice being consistent 3-betting those hands. Step 3, learn how to handle the awkward situations post-flop, especially out of position. Step 4, get consistent with that. And then once you've gone through those 4 steps, which is work and it takes time, now you've outworked everybody. Now you're way more dangerous, right? What else? Linear and polarized ranges. Now, I will say this. I don't want to talk about this a lot because this is not the reason I'm doing this today. But later this month, I'm going to have some content available for people that want to go deeper into this stuff that's going to help you with these skills. Okay? I'm going to be making an announcement about that in the next week or two. I do have something that will help with this. So if you're lost on how to learn some of these things, keep an eye on my Twitter, keep an eye on my socials. I will have something coming out. But I don't want to talk too much about that because that's not why we're doing this today. But linear and polarized ranges are super, super important. And they're both valuable. For those of you who don't know, a linear range is a very value-heavy range where we're generally betting the strength of our hand. And we're focusing purely on the value side. And it is a wonderful range to use in loose passive games against weak players calling stations who are not paying attention to the size of our bets. Knowing how to manage that and use that range and when to appropriately apply it, super important. Polarized ranges are the Oreo cookie of poker, where you have your value hands, you have your bluffs. Those are the Oreo wafers. And then the cream filling is your checking and calling range that you protect to make sure you're balanced and you can't be taken advantage of in any node. So when you're betting, you can't be taken advantage of because you have strong and weak hands. When you're checking and calling, you can't be taken advantage of because you also have strong and weak hands. And it makes you very hard to play against. And these are the ranges that we build and use against great players, right? These are realms you need to know. Now, for those of you that have ambitions of playing like low stakes and low stakes tournaments, the polarized isn't going to be as important. We don't really need to be bluffing, and bluffing doesn't have a lot of value because we're playing players who call way too much, right? They don't understand the value they call way too much, and they don't fold enough. So more often than not, you are going to use the linear range, but especially if you're a tournament player, you are going to get deep in tournaments. The cream rises to the top. You're going to play better players. You're going to need to be able to switch between both worlds. And these are worlds, again, how hard have you worked on these concepts? Do you even know these concepts exist? Don't feel bad if you're watching this. You're like, I didn't know what a linear or polarized range is. Well, now you have, this is why we're doing this. Now you have a checklist. It's like, okay, this is something I need to not just Google on YouTube and watch a 10-minute video about. I need to dig in and work hard on this. 4, poker exploits, right? Exploitative poker. If you don't know what exploitative poker is just GTO poker in the real world, right? So think of GTO as like learning Taekwondo, okay? It's a craft, it's an art. You learn all of these styles, these forms, how to kick, how to punch, how to hit. And exploit poker is having a guy come up to you in the street and want to kick your ass, okay? Taekwondo is great. Don't get me wrong. It's cool to know those things, but it's a little different when a guy wants to beat your brains in, right? You got to know how to win a street fight. And exploit poker is learning how to beat these games and the moves and the attacks and the things you can do that kick ass in the games you're at. It's super important. Don't get me wrong. GTO changed my life. Literally changed my life. But before GTO changed my life, I had to learn exploits. I had to learn the value of small bets. I had to learn the value of going huge with my value hands and why people don't adjust to my sizings. And there's a lot of places you can learn exploits. There's a lot of great training sites out there that teach about exploits. I'll be talking about exploits in future streams. There's poker communities like Rec Poker. Head over to joinrec.poker that do book studies on these things, and they do group lessons. There's a lot of places you can learn about exploits. There's free content on YouTube. But again, if you don't know how to take advantage of the fields you're in, this is a realm. You need to put some hard work in. You got to put some time in. Then we get into some of the tournament-specific stuff. Bubble strategy, right? Do you understand how our play differentiates on the bubble? And have you practiced it enough to execute on it? The most common thing I see is I'll ask people, I'll be like, all right, do you understand how bubble strategy changes? Oh, yeah, I understand. Like, you get on the bubble, people are scared of bubbling, so we get to apply pressure and raise more. And then I'll see them fold ace-5 offsuit from the cutoff. What are you doing? Well, ace-5 offsuit's not an open from the cutoff. No, it's not an open for the cutoff in a GTO world. But when you're on a money bubble and there's ICM pressure, it's an amazing hand to open. It prints. And sometimes people know they're supposed to be aggressive on the bubble. They know the types of hands they're supposed to be aggressive with on the bubble, but they don't have the discipline and consistency. Or like their subconscious is so wired that somebody's folds under the gun and they're looking at the button. They go, oh, ace-5 off. Yeah. And they fold before it even gets to them, right? So working on this, getting that consistency up, reviewing your tournaments on the bubble. Am I actually following through with what I understand and know? Am I actually appropriately applying bubble pressure? Are you doing those things? Have you worked through those things? Do you have a really good bubble game? Because it's important. It's important. You want to win tournaments? You want to make money in tournaments? I know so many people, I won't drop any names, who are great early game poker players. They're great mid-game poker players. And then they turn into the nittiest nits on the planet from the money bubble down to the final table. And they're like, I just don't understand why I can't win at this game. Well, because the most profitable point of the entire tournament, where you have the most fold equity, you're turning into like circa 2005 Phil Hellmuth, only play the top 10%, the top 10 hands in the game and don't play anything else. And then you go through a little run of not having good cards. You go 4 orbits without aces or kings or queens, and all of a sudden you got 4 big blinds and you're like, crap. And then you lose a flip and you're like, I don't understand why I never win the key flip. Because you're not supposed to win the key flip. You're supposed to accumulate all the way through so that when you lose the key flip, you still have chips in your stack. Super important. Along the lines of bubble strategy, final 2 tables. Do you know how to navigate getting down to the final 18 or 16? Because you know what everybody tries to do when they get down to the final 18 or 16? They try to make the final table. I just want to make the final table. It's exciting. I haven't made a final table in a month. Oh, this final table would be so huge. It would look so good on social media. I can't wait to tweet my friends and text my friends and say, hey, I made a final table, blah, blah, blah. I want to get the screenshot out. Got to make the final table. And guess what? They make the final table and they're 9 out of 9 with basically no shot in hell of winning the tournament. When if they'd be willing to risk going out 16th, 14th, 13th, 12th, 11th, they'd come into some of those final tables as a chip leader and they'd win a lot more tournaments and they would win a lot more money. It takes work. It takes work. And this isn't just, we're going to talk about the intangibles in a little bit. But it takes work, not just knowing what to do, but again, having the discipline, the emotional self-control, Like being able to lose a flip for the chip lead with 13 left and walk away and go, that was okay. Yeah, I lost. I didn't get the results I wanted, but that was the right move, and I'm going to feel good. I'm not going to sit here and feel shitty about going out 13th. I'm not going to spend the entire night thinking about what could have been and what was up top and how much money I could have made. I'm going to walk away and go, I put myself in a position to win the tournament. Didn't work out, but I put myself in a position to win the tournament. Venom says, damn, that hurt. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. And I'm not going to sugarcoat this because, again, my hope is that this either excites you and inspires you to work your ass off to get to a very obtainable and achievable goal, or it depresses the hell out of you and you go, this is not worth it, and you realize that you love playing poker for fun and you don't need to bog yourself down with this shit. And that's fine. Both routes are fine, right? I'm a huge Cobra Kai Karate Kid fan. You know, the scene, Karate Kid 1, he's talking about be on this side of the road, be on this side of the road, don't be in the middle road, get squished like grape. Too many of y'all are getting squished like grapes because you're friggin' stuck between I want to play poker for money and be a poker pro, and I want to play poker for fun. And so you don't get far enough this way to make any money, but you're sure as hell not having any fun, and you're just stuck. Pick a lane. Play poker for fun. I mean, I can think of, who's the guy, Jay, who's the cash game guy with the trucker hat? On Tilt Nick. That dude plays poker for fun, man. He is on these streams. He'll 3-bet you with 4-7 off. He doesn't give a shit. He's having a great time. He is living his best life. And what's even better is he's learned how to generate revenue from poker, right? Without actually doing it, playing poker. He's having a friggin' blast. Some of you should wish you could have as much fun as he has. You just got to embrace it, right? Or if the money matters to you, if you're like, I need to make money playing the game, this is my dream, cool. Don't go halfway and quit. Don't like come halfway down the path of hard work, but then not do enough hard work to actually have any of that hard work pay off. See it through. Push through it. Go down this list and go, what am I not working hard on? Which of these lines am I getting outworked? And then have the accountability and maturity to go after it. 2 more. ICM. It's a big one. It's a big one. If you do not have a good understanding of ICM, then you're going to cost yourself money with a lot of your decisions at the point where the money matters most. And there are players out there, without a doubt, they have a 22% in the money percentage. They cash tournaments very consistently. But because they're making huge ICM mistakes at the final table, they're losing money. They're losing players. And that's probably one of the hard things about this is like, you can have 80% of this right, and the 20% that's wrong can completely tank you. And that's why, again, we're trying to outwork 90 to 97% of our opponents in the games we're playing. So if there's players in the games you're playing that understand this concept and you haven't worked on it, it's going to hold you back. And then the most important one that nobody wants to work on is heads up play. Somebody tell me why heads up play is the most important thing you need to work on if you're going to be a tournament player. And you want to play for money, profit. I think Asinine Bovine got it. He's typing on his phone. Most money difference. Yep, Craig. That's where all the money is. Yeah, the biggest pay jump is between second and first. Now, in a vacuum, you're going to be lucky to win 65% of your heads up matches. So it's not like you're going to master heads up play and just start winning 90% of your heads up matches. You're going to win about 65%. But you can lose more than 35% if you're really bad and don't know what you're doing. So massively important because that's where the money is. You want to give yourself the best possible chance of winning these tournaments. So you got to work on it. which means going through all of this list. This is the most frustrating thing. You learn all these things, right? And then you get to heads up play, and it's like, well, now I need to learn pre-flop ranges for heads up play. Completely different animal. I need to learn 3-bet pots for heads up play. Completely different animal. Linear and polarized ranges in a heads up world. Completely different animal. Poker exploits and heads up. Different animal. You got it, right? Casper, I hope you're doing well, buddy. Hope everything is going as well as it can go, all things considered. So sorry for the loss of your house. Thank you so much for the 24 months. Casper's been around for a long time. Was impacted by the wildfires out there. It's one of those things where like it is work, but getting good at it can add literal zeros to your profit each year. Super glad to hear that, Casper. Literal zeros to your profit if you are putting in the time to work on this. Heads up matters. Craig in the YouTube chat can attest to this. He's worked on his heads up game a lot. It's made an impact. Living in a friend's at the moment, moving to a tent place for a fuse while I ponder rebuilding. Well, first and foremost, I'm glad that you and the dog or dogs, I can't remember how many you have right now, but I'm glad you guys all got out safe. That was my biggest worry when I heard that. And if anybody has the GoFundMe link handy, feel free to put it in the chat. So those are the skills. Those are the skills that you really need to put the work in and outwork your opponents on. So again, highly encourage you. Go down this list. Ask yourself super honestly if you've outworked your opponents on these things. And come up with a list. Come up with a to-do list. Don't try to tackle it all at once. Pick up one at a time. Give yourself time and grace. Like, this doesn't have to be a you figure this out in 3 weeks thing. Like, if there's 3 items on this list that you need to work on, give yourself a couple months on each one. Make a goal to have those things mastered by the end of the year and give yourself time and grace to get there. You got time. You got time. Give it to yourself. Don't burn yourself out, but also make yourself aware you got to do them. Having all these tools in your arsenal and you know so much, why aren't you playing Tritons? We're going to get there. We're going to get there. He's leading he's leading into some things. So let's talk about poker intangibles. Now, these are skills that are not necessarily directly tied to poker, but are just as important and valuable as the skills you need to play poker. And if there is a place in all of this list where you have the most opportunity to make up ground, it's on these next several items. Because these are the areas that people don't even realize are a part of the game. So let's dig in. First, mindset. So massive. Working on your mindset. Now, mindset is several things. And again, not the sexiest thing in the world to talk about, right? Like, this is not something that people like to focus on. It's not something they like to participate in. It gets a little weird for some people. I know when I first heard about like meditation and like hypnosis and all this stuff, I was like, God, no. You know, I used to be a pastor. I came out of a lot of like religious trauma and stuff. The last thing I wanted to do was jump into like frog poison or any, I'm making fun of Brain Candy now, but like any of that whole realm, I didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't want anything to do with it. No thanks. Hard pass. But I was pushed by some good friends, you know, have an open mind, try it, learn the science behind, you know, hypnosis and how like you can change your subconscious. It's not some weird kooky spiritual thing. I mean, it can be, but like really it's just this idea that our subconscious is part of our brain. It's a part of our decision-making tree and it can be reprogrammed. So you can take some subconscious impulses and you can rewire them to think differently so that our kind of Gut reactions to things are more accurate, more correct. Hella valuable. I was blown away. I went in and I'm like, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to give it a try, but I don't want to do this. And it was wild because it was just like, I got, I had a mindset coach that I worked with, and he told me to go get the Prime Mind app. And so I went into the Prime Mind app and I just found things that I was like, this is definitely something I don't want to do. And I would start doing them daily. I would do the meditations daily. And it was like weird. It was a weird thing because like suggestive selling or whatever you want to call it. Like I started wanting to do the things that I was meditating about. I started shifting my behavior. I started shifting my process. And I went from this thing that like I didn't really want to work on or do or participate in to something that was like, I got to do this every day. This is the best 15 minutes of my day. So valuable. And mindset really breaks down into some different issues. Emotional self-control is a huge one, right? Tilt, preventing tilt, huge one. These two go hand in hand, where we are learning to understand the situation for where it is. I was talking to my friends last night in our text group. I was talking about paying the 80-20 tax. What is paying the 80-20 tax? It's an understanding that after you win with 80-20s for a while, you got to pay a tax. You got to lose 20% of the time. You're not entitled to win 100% of the time with aces. You're entitled to lose 18 to 21% depending on what your opponent has. And you got to pay that tax. It's part of the game. You get frustrated about it, you get emotional about it, you get pissed off about it. Now it costs you more. Because not only does it cost you the hands you already lost, but it costs you focus from making your best decisions moving forward. So important. Got to work on these things. How hard have you worked on your mindset? Scale from 1 to 10. Don't put it in chat. I'm not asking you to, I'm not outing anybody, but in your head right now, ask yourself, how hard have you really worked on your mindset? And for those of you who've been playing the game for a longer time, how hard have you worked on it recently? I don't care that you worked on your mindset 4 years ago. How hard have you worked on it in the last 6 months? Keeping it real. This is what it looks like to be profitable. If you want it bad enough, it's right here for the taking. But you got to do it. Confidence. Oh, confidence is so important in poker. Do you know why heaters exist? Heaters exist because somebody wins, and it's the first time in forever where their confidence is actually where it should be. And they just start to trust their instincts the way at a level that they should trust their instincts. And now all of a sudden they have the confidence to make their best decisions. And so they go on this streak where they're playing at the highest level they've ever played. And the only thing that's changed, maybe some run good in there too, but that confidence level is high. And that's why you can see these people just start to rip off 2-3 final tables in a row, because people don't understand how much your confidence being hurt has a negative impact on your game. So important. Where's your confidence level? Have you worked on it? If your confidence is down, what is your process to bring your confidence up? Do you have one? These are things. They're things. Positive attitude. Whew. Now, listen. I know some people live in the camp of manifestation. You do you. I'm not a big manifestation guy. I'm not a big, like, you know, if I wake up and think that I'm going to win $1 million, that it's going to show up on my doorstep or any of that. I don't go that far down the road. If you do, God bless you. I don't want to deter anybody from their personal beliefs. But I do believe that on a base level, even with my conservative views on that topic, your outlook is going to frame your decision making. And the more positive outlook you have and the more positive attitude you have, the more it's going to open the door to make good decisions. And the more negative outlook you have and the more negative attitude you have, the more it's going to shift you into negative EV decisions. So maybe in a roundabout way, we do manifest things in a cause and effect way, where when we have a positive attitude, we open the door, we keep the doors open to the plus EV decisions that set us up for success. And when we have a negative attitude, we pigeonhole ourselves into the minus EV decisions, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, not from some mystical, you know, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but just because we're our attitude defines our path, and our path defines our destination. So you got to have a positive attitude. And there's nothing worse, right? There's nothing more friggin' annoying than did I spell telt? Thank you. See, this is why you have friends, because they'll text you and they'll be like, "Bro, you don't know how to spell." Much appreciated, Jay. And now I just completely lost my train of thought. There's nothing more annoying than when you're in a bad mood or you have a negative attitude and somebody comes on and says, "Just be positive. Let the sunlight shine in your face and just appreciate the day." Yeah, right? It's friggin' annoying. But you want to be successful? This is where you got to go. What else? Consistency. So friggin' important. Consistency is so friggin' important. I guarantee you, I've seen it. I've seen it more times than I can count. There's at least one person in this chat right now who has done the work. They have worked hard on their game. They've worked hard on the poker intangibles, but they will not stay on the path long enough to see success. They're like, you know what? I'm going to go play tournaments. And they work hard in their game and they play tournaments for a month. And because they didn't get the results they wanted, they lose hope and they jump to cash games. And they start working hard in cash games and they play cash games for a month and then they lose hope and they jump to sit and goes. And then they play sit and goes for a month. And they just keep bouncing to thing to thing to thing. And the only thing they needed to do was ride it out. Stay in the path long enough to realize their equity on the hard work they've done. But because, again, we want instant gratification. We want, I put in this, I get this. I put in 8 hours, I get money back. We want this instant response, and we don't understand that hard work pays off on a delayed path, right? A farmer doesn't put a seed in the ground and have corn the next day. There is a growth that has to take place, and it takes time, and it has multiple stages. In fact, let me just, I took this note. By the way, I'm getting to the age where I have to put friggin' notes in my phone because I'll think of the most brilliant things, and I'll forget to write them down. The next day, they're gone. So I'm at that age now. I have to pull up my notes, but I just wrote this down the other day. Check this out. Steps to learning. Okay, this is, and I don't even know if this is backed up by science. I don't care. Craig can correct me, but steps to learning. This is the steps to learning anything you want to learn. Number one, you got to learn it. Duh, right? So you're going to learn it. You're going to learn the concept. You're going to learn what it means, how it works, how it operates. Step two, you got to internalize it, right? You got to take it from here, to your heart. You got to internalize it. So it's a part of who you are. It's something you believe. With conviction, right? So you learn it, then you internalize it. Step three, you implement it. Now you start to put it into practice. Now you start to execute on it. You start to act on this thing you've internalized. Then step four, you experiment with it, right? You start to learn the boundaries of it. How far can I go with this thing? How much can I stretch it? Which situations is it appropriate? Which situations is it not? You start to work out this. And then step five, you optimize it. Now, as you're experimenting it and you're starting to learn where the boundaries are, you start to craft that area. You start to understand how much to lean into that concept, when to aggressively use it, when to passively use it. And then finally, step six, you master it, right? Learn it, internalize it, implement it, experiment on it, optimize it, master it. You think you can do all that in a month? Seriously. It takes time. You want to be a tournament player? You want to be a cash game player? By God, do it. I am cheering for you so damn hard. I want to see you find success. But you got to go through those steps. You got to learn it. You got to internalize it. You got to implement it. You got to go through all of those steps, and that's going to take time. And this is why so many people give up so early, because they don't want to go through all that. It's work. It's work. It's not fun to experiment. It's not fun to optimize. You know what's fun? taking a picture with a huge stack of chips at a live tournament and getting stacks of $100 bills handed to you. You know how many days of misery and bad beats and wondering if second guessing yourself you have to go through to get to that day? A hell of a lot. But I've never, ever talked to anybody in that moment who's sitting there with a huge score, biggest score of their life, trophy sitting there, they're taking the picture. I've never talked to a person in a situation they're like, you know, Rob, wasn't fucking worth it. Wasn't worth it. All that work. Man, every friggin' one. Tears streaming down their face. I finally got here. It was worth every night of lost sleep. It was worth every night of crying and being upset and wondering in second. Every friggin' night. It was worth it. You got to go through the process. So determination. Sorry, I'm on my high horse now. Y'all got me started. I'm not going to slow down now. And proper sample size, which just goes along with what I'm taking, right? Like, you don't play 50 tournaments and have an idea of like proper sample size. You don't play 100 tournaments. You need sample size. You know how you know when you've got sample size? Because you don't have sample size anymore. What the hell are you talking about, Rob? By the time you've played enough tournaments to have a proper sample size to know what your win rate is, you should be so much better on the other end of it that you look at the start and you go, I'm not the same player anymore, so these stats don't apply. And that may be a frustrating answer because then you're like, well, then how the hell do you ever know where you're at? Exactly. You don't. Because you can't measure it based just on results. You know what you rely on at that point? Have you been putting in the hard work? You seeing a theme here? Have you been putting in the work? Am I making sense? Is anybody getting anything out of this? We're going to go well over an hour. Who gives a care? This is good shit. Number 3. Oh, this is going to really hit some people in the nuts. Adaptation. Somebody asked me last week, why do you think more people aren't successful? Or what do you think is the thing that holds people back the most? And it's this one right here. Adaptation. Because for the vast majority of poker players I see that are not winning right now, there are multiple things that I can say, hey, you should think about changing that. Oh, no. I can't change that. No, I can't do this. No, I don't want to have a strong check raising range. No, I don't want to play on this poker side. I hate the interface. No, I don't want to play small fields. They bore me. So on and so forth. They're not willing to adapt. Now, again, if your goal is to play for fun, don't adapt. If your favorite thing in the world is to play the Venom every quarter, then go play the Venom every quarter. And flip the bird to anybody that gives you shit about it. It's your poker game. It's your hobby. Do whatever the hell you want with it. But if your goal is profit, right? Stop chasing the sexy money and start chasing the easy money, for the love of God. Are you willing to change when you see a better way? Because being ahead of the curve is literally having the anticipation and the follow through to understand that there's a better way. There's a work smarter, not harder way. There is a more lucrative way. And the early adopters are the ones that really crush this game because they don't have boundaries. They don't have limitations. If they got to play poker on a text site, shout out to all my old people that grew up in DOS, where like it spits out the words and they can make more money playing poker on a text site that tells you what the hands are, they're going to do it. They're going to do it. If they can make more money on a cryptocurrency site than a site they can use their credit card, they're going to figure out how to use that cryptocurrency site. They're going to adapt because the goal is to make money. And you can make $12 an hour over here versus $6 an hour here. What's convenient to you doesn't matter, right? If the goal is to make money. And a little hint with this, usually what's unpopular is softer. Plain and simple. The more popular something is, chances are the more better players it's going to bring to the table. So, if you're willing to do what's not popular, if you're willing to play the games that other people aren't willing to play, if you're willing to go to the live card room that other people aren't willing to go to, provided there's a game running, you're probably going to find softer competition. So this holds true with where you play, what you play. It holds true with how you play. Like, I can't tell you again how many people I've tried to coach or had conversations with, and they're just like, nope, I'm not going to 3-bet out of the blinds. Just not going to do it. Okay. Don't do it. You're costing yourself money, but don't do it. Right? We have to be willing to adapt. Thanks for stopping in, Vader. Ginger, glad you're getting something out of this. Venom says keep going. I ain't slowing down. All right. Number 4. Let me actually lower this. Oh, I see what's going on here. Hold on. There we go. All right. Game selection. This goes hand in hand with what we were just talking about. So friggin' important. Game selection. What are the best games and locations to make money? Now, there's multiple facets to this. First, data is always a good thing. My friends get sick of me about a lot of things. They get sick of me about bitching about bankroll management, which is the next thing we're going to talk about. I have all these rants, and they're all sick of hearing it. One of the rants that my friends are sick of hearing of is me saying, get the data. You can't friggin' make decisions if you don't have the data. Do you know which site you have the best ROI on? Even if it's negative, right? If you're not to a winning rate and you have a negative 10% ROI on one site and a negative 50% ROI on site B, you probably should be playing a lot more on site A because you're pretty close to getting over the hump. Whereas site B, you're getting your ass kicked and you're just hemorrhaging money. But the vast majority of players don't even know what their win rates are. They're scared to look. You don't need to be scared to look, okay? It's not, listen, it's not something to be embarrassed or ashamed of, all right? I guarantee you just pretty much everybody in this chat, we could throw into some of the European sites and we'd all have losing rates. Because some of those European sites are some of the toughest players in the world, right? It's all relative. All it is a measure of where you've worked compared to the players you're playing. Do you know? Do you know your win rate? And do you know it across multiple locations? Do you know it across multiple game types, right? Do you know it across multiple formats? Do you lose more money in PKOs or mystery bounties than you do regular formats? Do you lose more money in regular formats than you do turbos? Know these things. Set yourself up for success. Are you willing to prioritize what works over what you want to do? And this goes hand in hand with adaptation as well. It's a hard one for people, right? I have a lot of these, but like I can think of friends, nobody in this chat. Going back several years, they would play a game. They'd be making money at that game. And then they get bored and try and jump into something else. Like, they'd be beating the 90-man sit and go super consistently. And they'd be like, I'm making money in the 90-man sit and goes, but I want to go see if I can make money in jackpots. Why? Why? Once you figure out how to make money in a certain part of this game, drain the friggin' swamp, right? Like, you don't have to be the master of every skill game and every set and every option and every variant and every formation and literally exhaust the resource. But I think again, human nature, we all get into this game for the fun aspect first before the money aspect comes along. Because of that, we want to go have fun and we get bored easily. And so we get away from what works. It's human nature. I put a video out on my YouTube channel a couple weeks ago about the NFL playoffs and about how these NFL teams literally lost playoff games because they got away from what worked. You know, the Detroit Lions is the one that comes to mind the most. Jahmyr Gibbs averaging 8 friggin' yards a carry, but they just kept letting Jared Goff throw interceptions. It was very clear he was not on his game. They got away from what worked. Put yourself in situations, game selection-wise, that set you up for success. Might not be the most fun, but if your goal is profit, then the goal is profit. That's the priority. Fun is secondary. All right, Jay, dip out for 3 minutes. Bankroll management. I don't need to harp on this one too long. Most of you kind of understand what bankroll management is. But it's simple. Do you have a plan? Because most people don't. Are you accountable to your plan? Because most people aren't. And a good barometer of all of this is there pressure not to lose? And this is the one you got to be friggin' honest with yourself about. If you're playing in games where you're final 18 and you're more worried about not losing than you are winning the tournament for whatever reason, the money up top means too much to you, you need the pay jumps and you can't afford to bust in this spot because you're going to have to redeposit. If you have that kind of pressure, you're not doing it right. Because this game is hard enough to play at a very high level with just the strategy involved. And if you're putting extra weight on your shoulders because of the way you're approaching bankroll management, how do you ever expect to make smart decisions? How do you ever expect to play your best? How do you ever expect to optimize your ROI? Remember, in tournaments especially, your ROI is defined by 3 spots. First, second, and third. 3 spots. Your ability to hit those top 3 spots is going to define your entire ROI, and it's going to define whether you're a winning or losing player. So if you're getting down to the final 15 and you are diminishing your chances of top 3 because that next pay jump's another $100 in your bank account because, you know, you don't want to bust 14th. Or even worse, maybe you're in a small field tournament and top 10 pay, right? You just want to get in the money. So you can't take the spot that's the most obvious spot in the world to play for the chip lead because you just want to get that min cash. You're not set up for success. You're not set up for success. And then lastly, process. Process is so important. Make mistakes, learn from mistakes, and adapt changes. You have to have this process be part of your game. And it kind of is a simpler version of what I talked about with the 6 steps of learning. You have to be able to go make mistakes. Be willing to fall forward. Be willing to fail. I put a short out last week, and I had a couple funny comments from people. The short was just simple. You want to win? Get comfortable losing. And somebody in the comments said, how could losing possibly help you win? And I'm like, it's really simple, right? There's no such thing as a permanent win streak. You don't just get to win every time you play. So if you want to win 10 times, you probably got to be willing to lose a certain amount of times to win 10 times. And if you stop playing because of fear of losing, you stop giving yourself the opportunity to win. Now it's on a big scale, but on a smaller scale here, right? We're afraid to make mistakes. We're afraid to look stupid. We're afraid to bluff it off. We're afraid to bluff catch and be wrong. We're afraid to, quote, punt with 15 left. Everything we do is fear-based. We got to get away from that. We have to understand that making mistakes are opportunities. Because We learn more from our mistakes than we ever learn from our successes. When people come up to me, and I'm not bragging on myself, but when people come to me, they're like, wow, you got a really good head on your shoulders. You got a lot of really valuable information. I'm like, yeah, you know why? Because I completely fucked up my 20s. I made every goddamn stupid mistake you could possibly make. And then I learned from them. And some of the mistakes I had to make 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times to learn from them. But eventually I learned from them. And now I still make mistakes in my 40s. Now I'm making better mistakes. I'm not making the same mistakes I made in my 20s because I've learned from them. But I haven't stopped screwing up, and I won't stop screwing up. You want to embrace a culture of failure. Seriously, you want to embrace a culture of failure. Now, I do have to be careful, right? We are in a gambling industry. If you have a gambling problem, please do not gamble yourself into oblivion and use this as an excuse. Seek help. But if you're working within proper bankroll management, you're not losing too much, you're not risking too much, then making mistakes is okay as long as you're learning from them. Making mistakes and not learning from them, not okay. Making mistakes, learning from them, but then not adopting the changes, not okay. You need all 3 steps. But as long as all 3 steps are in place, learn, make mistakes, fall forward, screw up. That's all a part of that experimentation stage I talked about. You learn a new concept. Let's say you're learning how to 3-bet more aggressively, like we talked about earlier, right? Make some mistakes with it. 3-bet some hands you shouldn't. Realize that you should have 3-bet some hands that you didn't. What was the consequences of that? Learn from those mistakes. And then some of the mistakes will be cause and effect, right? Oh man, I can 3-bet ace-10 off here from the small blind. I'm going to do it. Oh crap. Now I'm out of position and he called. I don't know what to do. And now I made a mistake. Cool. Now you have an opportunity to learn more post-flop play, right? It's going to open the door to more progression in your game. So you got to get super comfortable with this process. I always get a kick out of like when someone brings a hand history to me and they're immediately starting to make excuses. Now, Rob, there's this hand and I who cares? Okay, so you fucked up a hand. If I pulled one of my hand histories from last night, do you know how many mistakes we would find? We're going to find plenty. It's just part of the game. Embrace it. Get comfortable. Go with it. Jay says, side note hint, don't use an app for bankroll management. Make it hard. Force yourself to write it down. Part of the process to this isn't easy. I like that. I like that. Kind of helps you to, face it head on. All right. So I got to save some voice for tonight. I already feel it going. But I promised you guys a shortcut. I did. And I'm going to give it to you here in just a second. But before I do, let me just wrap this up and put a bow on this by saying this. I will put this document in the show notes so you guys can review this. You can go through it. Please, please, please be honest with yourself. Give yourself time. Give yourself grace and be fine with whichever path you take. I love recreational poker players. I do. I even envy them because I think they have more fun at the game than I do. Don't feel bad about that. And don't even consider it failure. Like if you've had a dream of being a profitable poker player and you've decided it's not worth the time and energy and work to do it, that's not failure. That is you learning from a mistake and adapting changes. It's you learning that, you know what? I didn't realize the cost involved. It's not really worth what I thought it was worth. I would lose too much entertainment from the game, enjoyment from the game. I love this game. I want to stay in a place where I'm loving this game. It would take that out. So I'm going to make the decisions best for me. That is a victory. That is not a failure. That is not a defeat. And on the flip side, if you look at this and you're like, I really friggin' want this. Cool. A lot of people want it. Not a lot of people are willing to do what it takes to get there. The best part about all this is the vast majority of this is just work. It's not... This isn't the NBA where if you're not 7'1" or have freakish athleticism, you're done, right? This is a game where you can have a world of struggles to overcome and still get there. Even those of you that have bad emotional self-control, it can be worked on. It can be fixed. It might take you longer. You may have to do more things to get over your tilt than somebody else did. But how bad do you want it? How hard are you willing to work? Are you willing to outwork the other people at your games? You can do it. But let's talk shortcuts, okay? There's 2 shortcuts I'm going to give you today. One you've heard me talk about ad nauseum, and I'm not going to stop saying it. And the other is going to maybe not be what you were thinking of. There's 2 shortcuts here. The first shortcut, play small fields. For the love of God, okay? Play small fields. Because if we go back up to this list, see all these here? Bubble strategy, final 2 tables, ICM, heads up play. How much practice do you think you're going to get in that each year if you're playing 1,000 to 1,500 person fields? How many times are you going to get heads up in a year? Twice? Maybe 3 times? Not a lot of experience, not a lot of mistake making, not a lot of learning, not a lot of adapting. You're not going to get much. You want to get better at these 4 things? You need to get into these situations as much as humanly possible. So, sacrifice. Be willing to put the majority of your volume into 50 to 150 or 200 person tournaments. You can still sprinkle in some big fields. Sure. Do your occasional shot takes. But if your goal is to make money at this game, get into the boring games. Chase the unsexy money and get really friggin' good at these 4 concepts. Because this is where your ceiling is hit. All of this stuff up here. Oh, geez, don't do that, Rob. Learning your preflop range is super important. 3-bet pots, all of this is very important stuff. It's foundational stuff. You need to know it to get to a profitable level. But the difference between a 10% ROI player and a 50% ROI player is all down here. It's all down here. And you got to get the experience. So small fields, abso-friggin-lutely massive. And the smaller the better. You can get 50-person fields. That's fantastic. People hate playing 50-person fields. I don't know why. It's the place where you have the least amount of pressure. You get the most experience with these spots. Hammer them. Obliterate them. Go nuts with them. The other shortcut, so valuable. And I'm stealing a little bit from Pads. He wasn't talking about this concept, but he said some things yesterday on Berkey's pod that kind of made a light bulb go off for me. All right. Here it is. Bam. If you really need a shortcut, you're like, Rob, I got to start making money at this game sooner than later. I just don't have time to go through this 27 item list that you typed out here and master all of these skills. And I just need to take a shortcut. I don't advise it. I don't advise the shortcut, but here it is. Late reg, turbo tournaments only. You know why? Because when you late reg turbo tournaments that have really fast structures, guess what you're only playing? Pre-flop. That's it. Average stacks are going to be 5 to 10 big blinds. You're almost never going to see a flop. When you do, your SPR is going to be super small, so you're going to have very simple decisions. So the amount of stuff you have to learn goes down dramatically. You don't need to know 100 big blind ranges when you're playing 10 big blinds effective. Don't need to know 80. Don't need to know 60. Don't need to know 40, right? If you can get your 10 to 20 big blind ranges down, you just play late reg turbos, the amount of stuff you need to know to be profitable goes down by like 80%. Now, understand some things here. There's going to be very little post-flop play, so less you got to learn there. can really just focus on ICM and ranges. So very little to master there. But you're going to have to be absolutely flawless with bankroll management and mindset. Because let me tell you, the variance in playing turbos, through the rough. Through the rough. So you're going to need to make sure that you have no risk of ruin. And you're going to make sure that you have an ironclad mindset. And when you go on 100 big blind or 100 buy and down swings, you're unfazed. But it's a path. It's a path. It's a path that requires way less learning, way less hard work, and you just have to focus on 4 areas: ranges, ICM, bankroll management, mindset. So there is a shortcut path that you can take. I'm not recommending it, but I'm throwing it out there. All right. Questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, ideas, retorts, hate mail. Send it to me. What do you got? Jay says, make good decisions, work hard, don't give up, stay mentally strong. The cards don't know people. So the world doesn't hate you. Live in the controllable bubble and have fun. Yeah. $100%. We are so blessed to play in the greatest game in the world at a time where, it's going to be an unpopular opinion, profitability is obtainable as it's ever been. But obtainable doesn't mean easy. Tonight, 7:30 Eastern. Watch ChaseTheDream.com. We'll be talking about some similar concepts. We're going to be talking tonight. I want to talk tonight about the opportunity that poker is giving us right now. I really want to dig into that. I want to talk about how we're probably in the best era that poker has ever had. Yeah, my meeting before this ran right up to my right up to the stream, so I didn't have a chance to get it wrapped, but I'm close, Craig. I'll have it out probably like within 30-40 minutes of the stream being done. But it's gonna be a good time. We're gonna talk about what's going on in the poker industry, the opportunities there. We're gonna catch up with the CTD crew and what's been going on in their lives. We're coming off a really big weekend. We had 3 final tables this weekend. Hit a bunch of new live milestones for my career. It was really cool. Jim Reed from Rec Poker, Bluff Storini, will be joining the crew tonight, hanging out with us, talking dreams, talking shop. It'll be a really good time. If you haven't checked that podcast out, it's awesome. You know why it's awesome? Because it's not a bunch of high rollers and Triton players with egomaniacs who are screaming, yelling about how they're the greatest players in the world. It's everyday people just like you, chasing their poker dreams, talking about their journeys, talking about the highs and lows. Hey, you don't like making mistakes? Come watch a podcast where people talk about their mistakes and you can learn from their mistakes and not have to make them yourself. Great way to go about it. Great way to go about it. So head over there, watch ChaseTheDream.com, hit the subscribe button. Also, make sure you hit the subscribe button here too. I'm working hard to put lots of content out this year. We're just going to flip the narrative. Like I could care less for all the toxic bullshit going on in poker. We're just going to do our own thing. We're going to put our own content. We're going to talk about poker, the journey, all that stuff. And I don't care what anybody else is doing. I really don't. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I'm going to get out of here. We got stuff to get ready for tonight. I appreciate y'all being here. I really, truly hope that you got something out of this. If you have questions that maybe you're not comfortable putting in the chat, you can hit me on all my socials. I'm Rob Gardner Live everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Shoot me a private message. And yeah, we'll talk. Otherwise, I hope to see you guys tonight. I hope to see you guys next week. And we'll talk to you soon.